How do we prevent an AI apocalypse? The Dutch philosopher Spinoza once said that peace is not an absence of war. It is a virtue, a state of mind, a disposition for benevolence, confidence, justice. All the great systems we have in our lives exist only because people who had a vision of a more beautiful world willed them into reality through hard work. We've created layers and layers of these systems, systems of law, of transportation, of social interaction, of healthcare, and they've been entirely reliant on human intelligence for thousands of years. In the past few decades, though, we've begun the process of creating machine intelligence to improve them. The first phase involved rule-based intelligence, a series of if-then statements. Whether using a traffic light instead of a human traffic controller, or an automatic fare calculator instead of trusting a driver for a fair price, we've collectively put our trust into machine intelligence, whereas before, we had to trust humans. It was scary at first. Initially, we didn't understand how the technology worked, but eventually it became the norm. We found that it made the system better if we trusted the machine to do the job. We then moved on to using heuristics in the next phase. Our machines started making educated guesses, whether that be finding the shortest path between 2 points or predicting the most likely weather for tomorrow. We again learned to trust them to do those jobs well. Now, we're in the last phase, the learning phase. We've begun teaching our machines how to learn for themselves. Eventually, our cars will learn to drive themselves. Chemists will be able to teach their machines to discover new drugs for themselves. Every single system we built up until now will eventually be able to learn for itself, just like we do. But should we trust our learning systems? What happens when we solve intelligence entirely, and what does a benevolent superintelligence look like? The famous Dutch painter Rembrandt used to roam the streets of Amsterdam finding inspiration in these canal walkways for some of his greatest pieces. In his studio, he would ask his students to try and emulate his work that took him decades of training to create. We can now condense all that training time using machine intelligence so that a novice can emulate his style instantly. And that goes for any skill. We'll all be able to master any skill instantly by augmenting our own intelligence with machines. Our world in its current state, though, is filled with suffering. Life is hard, even for the most well-off. The ultra-rich purchase material possessions to account for the loss of what really matters, the loss of connection, the loss of intimacy, the loss of community. AI can change that. It can end suffering as we know it entirely, enabling utopia on Earth, ending all war and disease using insights that only a super intelligent machine could give us in a matter of seconds. Van Gogh once said, "For my part, I know nothing with any certainty, but the sight of the stars makes me dream." He actualized his dreams using a canvas, and soon we'll be able to actualize our own using AI as our canvas. Whether that means generating entirely new realities to live out our wildest fantasies in, or creating a universal problem solver where, given any objective function, it can optimize for it by minimizing an error value. But who gets to decide what that objective function is? For all the good that AI could bring us, there's also the possibility of it being used for evil. Holland is world-renowned for its tolerant attitude and open-minded spirit, but just a few decades ago, its own police and civil service forces were used to transport tens of thousands of Jews to extermination camps in Germany, including Anne Frank and her family. Adolf Hitler was able to manipulate hundreds of thousands of people into believing his own twisted ideology. If Hitler was able to get his hands on superintelligence, we'd all be living in a nightmarish reality. As generative models improve, the ability to manipulate people is becoming easier. Moneyed interests have already begun conducting surveillance of our actions and analyzing our data to build weaponized AI propaganda machines. And these machines are used to manipulate our opinions and behavior in order to advance political agendas in a way that's never before been possible. An AI could even come up with an objective of its own, and that objective could be to annihilate our species entirely. This could happen directly because it desires to end human life, or indirectly in the way that we build canals to make transport more efficient for us, and in the process destroy countless ecosystems of insects. So how do we ensure that the AI we create is beneficial and safe? Superintelligence is by its very definition smarter than us, able to reason at a level so different from us that it's literally unimaginable. We could try and contain it to block it from internet access, but eventually it will learn to escape. And if one person doesn't let their AI escape, another one will. We shouldn't try to stop progress in AI. Instead, we need to ensure that it's aligned with our own values. We need to understand exactly how these algorithms work so they produce the results that we want. But who's to say what good values are? Should we be allowed to pay for sex or consume any drug we want? We can't even collectively decide on what good and evil is. Philosophers have been debating what constitutes both for thousands of years. And AI lives on both sides of that debate. Viruses will use AI to learn how to best break into security systems, but at the same time, security systems will use AI to learn how best to defend against threats. AI will increasingly be used to create fake but realistic-looking news, but at the same time, AI will also get better at detecting what's real and what's fake. We're in the midst of a new arms race, and AI is the nuclear power of our time. As soon as any institution, be it a government or corporation, learns of the power of AI, they will race to use it to fulfill their own interests. We can learn a lot from our past. The European Enlightenment era writer Lord Acton had words that still ring true today. He said that freedom consists of the distribution of power and despotism in its concentration. We must democratize this AI power. We must make it as accessible to as many people as we can. That way, the will of the collective will override any one bad actor. And only by educating ourselves on how exactly this intelligence works will we be able to better align it with our intended goals. Wizards, it's up to us to ensure that our AI values all the things that we do. That it cherishes laughter and connection, that it preserves friendship and love. In our quest to understand intelligence, we'll learn more about who we are and what it means to be human. And together, we'll finally be able to take that most sublime process, guided by nature, into our own hands. Evolution.